So EA thinks that Dragon Age the Veilguard should have been a live service game. That's the title in its glory. EA, I've had some choice words about EA in the past. Let me tell you what. They're pieces of shit. They're scummy rat people who like to squeeze every fucking dollar out of their player base. They don't give a fuck. Alright? They're gonna sell you garbage and hopefully you eat the shit. You know what I'm saying? If you're a professional shit eater, you like EA games.
So I'm just going to tell you, if you have pillows you could duct tape to your hands, or maybe oven mitts would be good. Put those on, prepare, because the facepalm energy in this video is going to be mad crazy. Because I'm going to share with you what EA executives think went wrong with Dragon Age Veilguard. And whatever you are...
So I'm just laughing already. It's like what went wrong with Dragon Age Veilguard and why it failed. It's not because of any of the reasons the player base tells them. They do not believe the player base is ever right. They are firm believers that the customer is always wrong. We'll tell you why it failed. This is why.
Thinking went wrong, even if you're being like a little sarcastic, is 1,000 times closer to reality than what EA executives are taking away from this debacle.
Yeah.
Which is both surprising and not. I mean, at this point, do we really expect business executives within the gaming industry to be in touch with actual gamers? Not really. So I guess it's not surprising, but the extent to which
they don't play the games, that's why. They have no clue. They have not a clue how a video, like what makes a good video game.
They are just so crazy wrong is surprising. You know, I expect them to be.
It's almost like they're getting the wrong data or the wrong feedback or something. You know, or they just don't listen. That's what I know about EA. They either just don't listen to the player base, or somewhere the data that they're receiving from these developers or this like game journalists or like the community is completely skewed and wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really weird. I don't understand how they keep fucking this up. I'm surprised. Like, I don't even, if EA makes it, I don't play it no more. That's literally my motto. If EA makes it, I don't play it.
Wrong. I didn't expect them to be totally opposite wrong. But you know what? Either way, it's funny, and we're going to talk about it because, you know, stupid things are funny, and that's where we are in the industry now with these big companies. So buckle up. It's going to get stupid. As always, if you enjoy the video, hit the subscribe button.
Buckle up. It's going to be stupid. Let's go.
I was going to think of a reason to press the subscribe button. I just want you to. So do it or don't. I can't tell if you do or don't other than the number going up. So
yeah.
I'm bad at this. I'm going to talk about Dragon Age now, okay?
Yeah. I feel
Super quick recap. Dragon Age Veilguard launched late last year to fine reviews for the very few people that actually got the chance to review it. But once everybody else got the chance to play the game, they started to agree with the select few YouTubers that were given review codes, the people outside of the core games journalist circle. And very quickly, people started agreeing with YouTubers like Mr. Matty Plays and SkillUp, who said that the game was a writing disaster. Notably, SkillUp in his review pointed out that it felt like all of the dialogue in the game was written as if HR were in the room. Jez also put it really...
See, I didn't even play the fucking game. I just seen reviews and just, I mean, I already had my motto. Because I learned about EA when I was playing Apex Legends. You play Apex Legends from Season 1 to Season 22, 23. No, yeah, 23. You'll realize that they don't give a fuck about their player base. They don't have a clue on how to fix shit.
Really well, where he said, I often feel less like my character in Dragon Age Veilguard is a badass wizard and more like he's a traveling therapist. Fair. Or my buddy Jackson, or JV, he actually put this very well in a way that I just couldn't. So I'm gonna show you this. He tweeted out this: the game feels like it was written by folks who have gone to therapy, and that sort of self-care language has seeped into the dialogue. It's not constant,
Most
as some
likely.
folks will suggest, but it is present when talking to companions, and that is not an insignificant amount of time or dialogue. Quote unquote therapy language isn't necessarily a bad thing. I go to therapy,
No.
but at times it does not.
Yeah, but like when you're playing a video game, you don't want to hear that bullshit. You want to play a fucking video game where you're killing shit and saving the world and being a hero. You don't want a fucking therapy session or a DEI session on how to be inclusive and how to, you know, say the right pronouns and shit like that. Nobody wants that shit, man.
Not work for me
just
here.
boring
And then
as
it gives
fuck.
examples that are actually taken from the game. This is actually how they talk. Let's take these problems one day at a time. That's all you can do. Look at the bright side of the situation. That's a win in my book. Let's focus on the real issues. We can't be fighting each other. You are enough. You don't need to prove anything. Setting aside the fact that these sound like little feel-good messages you would see on a crappy piece of art at Hobby Lobby, this is not how human beings actually speak to each other.
No.
Like, at least not in real life outside of a therapy session. If you need to
Or like a medieval fantasy setting either.
go to therapy, that's great. You should. But when we're writing a story in a fantasy world in which a dragon destroys an entire freaking city, destroying and killing thousands of people, and then you start complaining about your fifis and the clothes you're wearing or that other people are wearing, I
Or your
start to
gender
disconnect.
ideology.
Like, I'm not in the world anymore, you know?
you're not.
Like, I completely disconnect. And it happens so many times.
It just breaks the immersion. So I understand why the fuck people didn't like this shit. And like, I mean, like, yeah, as soon as I see EA's behind it, they don't know how to publish good games, man. They just don't.
Over the course of Dragon Age Veilguard, well, you would be dealing with a very serious situation, and then one of your companions would just start rambling about something really stupid and out of touch and frankly inappropriate for the situation that would normally warrant somebody going, "Shut up. There are people dying. I don't care that you're feeling sad or emotional about. We have to save lives.
We don't have time for feelings and emotions, right? But they do in this game.
Figure out your crap." Normally, that's how a real person would respond. But instead, in Dragon Age the Veilguard, you just go, "Well, your feelings are valid, and I appreciate you for bringing these forward. After all, we can't fight the dragon or the Elder Gods until we come together as friends." I'm like throwing up in my mouth just thinking of the words I just said. It's so repulsively terrible. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I need a margarita. I mean, water. But anyway, my point is the game was not great. I didn't really like it. I initially thought it had a ton of potential at the preview event I went to.
Yeah, the game looked, because I like Dragon Age games. I used to like them a lot. I played a lot of Dragon Age games, but as of late, with how the AAA studios have been doing us lately, us gamers, I've been steering clear of a lot of titles. You know what I'm saying? I make sure I look at the reviews, look at gameplay footage, and decide whether or not I like it before I go and try to buy something. You know.
But it turns out the snippets we were allowed to play that looked pretty good were literally the only cool moments in the entire game. And even though we were told that there was a lot more of that in the final game, it wasn't true. The entirety of the rest of the game was group therapy sessions, and that's about it. And I could tell that this wasn't going to be a big smash hit for Dragon Age, not the smash hit that they really needed, when my wife, who is a diehard Dragon Age fan, not connected to any of the like culture war drama around the game, she just played it and was left thoroughly disappointed by it. Specifically, the romances and companions she thought were laughably bad and stupid, to the point where she thought her game
So somebody who's not even involved with the drama behind or like on the internet about the game decided that the game was ass. See, it's not. It's an ass game. It's dog shit, and they're just trying to spoon feed you dog shit for $60-$70 a fucking purchase. You know what I'm saying? It's like, here goes some dog shit. It tastes really good. We promise you. Just give us $60, and I promise you this order of dog shit will taste better than the last order of dog shit. And then you go and buy it, and then you eat it, and you go, wow, this tastes like shit. You know what I'm saying? Like every time, people got to learn eventually. You know?
Glitched. The romances and some of the companion quest lines were so terrible. So not great when your most diehard fans rooting for you are left thoroughly disappointed because seemingly you have no idea what Dragon Age fans actually want. You were trying to give them something else. I don't even know what Dragon Age Veilguard is.
No, they were trying to appeal to a broader audience. That's what they were trying to do, to maximize profits, because that's what EA's whole business model is, maximizing profits. So don't make fucking good narrative driven games that are for a select audience. No, they want a broad audience. And at the time, I'm sure in development, the whole woke business was all so popular to these companies. They thought it was popular, but it really wasn't. I don't know why these companies and the government thought that people actually cared about these things, but they don't. But, you know. And then so they started making this game like this. That's what happened. I mean, and then they fucked it up. You know what I'm saying? They fucked it up. They should have just went with the old school way of doing Dragon Age games, and it would have been profitable and made them a lot of money, and it probably would have sold for like a couple years.
No, it's its own thing. It's like Kojima. It's a new genre, group therapy simulator. Nobody wants it, but it's there. But for the next handful of weeks, going on months, we didn't really hear much of anything while we were awaiting the news of how Dragon Age Veilguard actually did. Then we got a little update in mid-January. News that director Corinne Bush, like co-director technically, I think was the official role. Anyway, we got news that Corinne Bush was leaving BioWare for an opportunity too good to pass up, I believe was the statement specifically that was made. Could be surprising, could be worrisome, but also people leave all the time, so it might not be that big of a deal. Whatever. Then we get a studio update from Gary McKay, the general manager of BioWare, who says, in so many words, we are rearranging a bunch of people at the studio. We are moving some people out of BioWare. We're going to lay off some other people, and we are, as a team...
Yeah, they're probably just moving people from, like, BioWare to work on other projects within EA at other studios, because they have knowledge and know-how of other things. They're probably working on other video games, because I think BioWare is going to shut down. I think they're going to shut that shit down.
Team focusing specifically and exclusively on the next Mass Effect game, which is under the leadership of veterans from the original trilogy, including Mike Gamble, Preston Watamanuyuk, I'm so sorry, Derek Watts, Parrish, Lay, and others. But basically what this statement is saying is that they are laying people off and restructuring to focus entirely on that game, and they're walking away from Dragon Age. And then we got news that a few interesting departures were happening. Karen West Weeks, an editor at BioWare, was leaving. Just leaving. Trick Weeks, the lead writer on Dragon Age.
Are they like fucking husband and wife? I'm guessing Karen West hyphenated her last name to be Weeks.
Veilguard announced, I'm now looking for a new writing/narrative position. It's been a privilege to work with so many amazing devs over my 20 years at BioWare, and I will cherish the memories of the wonderful folks in the community I've met along the way. Thank you all. I'm starting to think that these were not departures in pursuit of greener pastures. I'm starting to think that this was a bit of a cleansing. Is that the word? Editor Ryan Cormier also announced that he was leaving. Jen, who was, I believe, a producer, left after 14 years at BioWare. And Michelle Flamm, a senior systems designer, also left BioWare. It's so fun.
Don't go to Pokemon. You're going to fuck up Pokemon.
Funny to me that all of these announcements are made on Blue Sky. It's just really funny to me that like every single one of them is on Blue Sky. Not X, Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
It's very funny to me. All of them are on Blue Sky.
What the fuck is Blue Sky? I never even heard of that shit.
It's just funny. But perhaps the best thing to come out of this was that it seems when you look at BioWare's LinkedIn associations, the entirety of the Dragon Age Veilguard main credited writing staff is no longer at BioWare. If you go into the game's credits and you look at all the people in the writing team, they're all gone. It's not that common, to be clear, that you typically have one thing that's wrong with the game.
You played yourself.
But in this case, everybody agrees it's the writing, and all of a sudden, all of the people associated with the writing of the game have been booted. It actually gives me a little confidence, or at least excitement. Maybe confidence is too strong. It gives me a little bit of cautious optimism, maybe, for the next Mass Effect. Because if they were willing to shed the writers who clearly didn't know what to give fans and what fans were looking for, whether you thought that they're capable writers or not, the point is they didn't know what fans wanted. Otherwise, they would have given it to them. And even if they knew what fans wanted and they chose actively not to give fans what they wanted, the type of content they wanted, why have they been hired to make a video game for those fans? You shouldn't be surprised when it doesn't meet sales expectations if you're intentionally not giving people what they want. So either way, they gotta go. But after all of this, we got news of exactly how Dragon Age Veilguard underperformed. You see, they expected to lose money on this game. They expected to move about 3 million units of the game over the first quarter, basically. They engaged 1.5 million players. That does not mean they sold 1.5 million copies. Yeah. Engaged 1.5 million players, as you can see they describe here. That to me suggests that they had like 1.5 million players, including returns on Steam, including hell, they might be counting pirated copies because the game didn't include any DRM at launch. They might be counting double players. That's like if I bought the game on PlayStation 5 and then my wife plays the same copy but on a different account through family sharing, that counts as 2 players but only 1 copy, but they would count her as a player.
Okay, yeah, they're probably counting all the complete engagement and not just like sales. There's no way they didn't sell that many. I mean, obviously they didn't sell that many. It wouldn't have been such a flop.
So I think they fudged the numbers a good bit to hit this 1.5 million number. And even there, they are down nearly 50% from the company's expectations, which would suggest that they expected 3 million. 3 million copies on a budget of probably hundreds of millions of dollars, because bear in mind, this game has been in development by the time it launched for like 5-6 years.
That's not good.
And from a whole massive studio. And after all of that, they only expected to move 3 million copies. Like, I don't think they expected to make money on this. I think they knew they were going to lose money after all the time they wasted making this a multiplayer game. They just didn't expect to lose this much. You know, it's like if you expect to lose $100 when flipping a car or something, and then you realize that actually you're going to lose 200 or 150 instead of just 100. You're probably going to be frustrated because you lost more than you thought. You still lost money, but you would rather have lost only 100 than 150. That's basically what happened with Dragon Age Veilguard. They just missed expectations by 50%, which represents millions, tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars, if not, 100 million when all was said and done. But after this, what's called preliminary earnings report, they sat on the rest of the news, which was going to come February 4th at 5 p.m. during their official earnings call for their whole company. And that's what just happened. And that is where we've been building to, because we got to find out from the horse's mouth, from Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA, we got to find out why he thinks Dragon Age didn't connect with people and what they could have done to fix it. And he's wrong. I'm just going to say he's wrong.
I believe it.
I could be like, he has an interesting perspective and maybe it's right. Maybe it's no, he's wrong. As you can see in this report from Forbes that collected some of the transcripts from the earnings call, quote, in order to break out beyond the core audience, bear in mind, this is the CEO of EA talking.
See,
games need.
They want to break out beyond the core audience. So they're trying to appeal to a more broad audience. That's the reason why it failed. When you try to appeal to too many people, you appeal to nobody. You know what I mean?
Directly connect to the evolving demands of players who increasingly seek shared world features and deeper engagement alongside.
Nobody wanted this to be MMO, man. Nobody wanted this to be multiplayer. Like, nobody asked for that. Yeah, cool. Multiplayer options, cool. But, like, nobody asked for multiplayer. Nobody asked for fucking multiplayer, man.
High-quality narratives in this beloved quality. Dragon Age had a high-quality launch and was well-reviewed by critics and those who played. However, it did not resonate with a broad enough audience in this highly competitive
market. God.
And just to be clear, so there's no ambiguity, shared world features and deeper engagement is the same terminology he uses for their live service games.
Yes.
What he's saying is that he thinks Dragon Age the Veilguard would have connected with more players and would have been more successful if it had stayed a live service game.
Yeah.
If it had stayed a multiplayer game where players can play with their friends.
Yeah.
And buy a battle pass. And maybe some loot boxes.
Yeah.
Maybe some cosmetics.
Not even maybe. Not even maybe. Like they wanted to sell cosmetics and sell battle passes for an egregious fucking price. That's what they want to do at EA. Every fucking game they want a battle pass.
That would have connected with a lot more people. That's what he's taking
That is crazy.
Away from this. And as you can see, Paul Tassi, the author of this article, doubles
He's
down
crazy.
on it.
He's lost
I don't
his
think
goddamn
anyone in the actual real world gaming community would agree with this sentiment, whether that's Dragon Age fans who didn't like the tone or aesthetic changes, new players who were lost or uninterested with the last game being a decade ago, or even culture war obsessives citing woke issues within the game. None of those groups would agree that it failed because it wasn't a live service. What an absolutely ridiculous notion.
Yeah.
I don't know how disconnected from actual gamers you have to be to conclude that Dragon Age the Veilguard would have been successful if only it had been a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
It's honestly
actually
so
insane.
dumb.
It's dumb as fuck.
It's giving me a headache as I try to decipher how somebody could think this way.
What you just said is one of the most
Look at that guy. Just look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Does this guy look like he plays video games? Fuck no.
insanely idiotic
He doesn't play fucking video games. He goes tannings and drinks Mai Tais and cheats on his fucking wife. That's what this guy
things
does.
I've ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
But you know what? Let's try.
He looks like the guy who like gets male hookers when he goes on business trips and then comes home and fucks his wife and be like, "Honey, I love you, but I don't love you as much as the boys that be fucking." You know, he looks like one of those guys. That's what he looks like.
Try to steelman this. Okay, let's try to be as charitable for whatever reason as we possibly can and figure out why
The guy definitely looks like he's a homosexual. Closeted, though, for sure.
the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company could be so terribly wrong.
Yeah.
I think why he's thinking this way is because he's looking at two very different gaming communities and assuming that they are the same, which is a typical problem for executives that think you can just like take single player gamers and get them to play a live service game in the same
And
franchise.
it'll be fun.
It doesn't translate like that.
No.
People who like MMOs might not be the same players that like the single player variation of that game. Like, you know, if you love Skyrim, you may not actually like ESO. If you like Fallout 4, you may not actually like Fallout 76, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Because what I think he's trying to say is that Dragon Age the Veilguard, when you compare it to their other games, whether it's FC or it's...
Some people don't have video gaming friends, man. It's like some people like those single player games too. Something that they can just come home and play for a little bit and get off, because like anything live service, you have to commit time. If you want to stay competitive or if you want to be strong in the game, especially MMOs, because every MMO now is like pay to win. So if you're behind, it incentivizes you to swipe that card so you can be strong, or else you're going to be so far behind and no one's going to be on your same level anymore because you're so in the past. And so you have to play by yourself and it's hard. You know what I'm saying? You're just going to get your ass whipped every fucking 2 seconds. It's just like you can't play any of the new content, but nobody's playing the old content anymore. It's just like, it's so dumb.
Madden or any of their other sports games, those games have extremely high engagement. Players come back repeatedly, sometimes multiple times a day, to continue playing. They are extremely committed to those franchises. And he's looking at a stat sheet that shows Dragon Age the Veilguard player engagement as being very, very low. There's a handful, I'm sure, of people that booted it up, played it for an hour and a half, and then returned it on Steam. There's a bunch of people who played it for maybe 10 hours and then couldn't stand the writing and shut it down and moved on. And so through his ivory tower glasses, he's looking at it and...
I mean, I'm sure the gameplay might have been fun. You know what I mean? It might have been fun. I don't know. I never played it, but yeah, man. The story narrative was probably the worst part of it.
Trying to conclude that, oh, player engagement's the problem. Players over here are engaging with live service multiplayer offerings. So if we do the same thing over here, we'll see better player engagement. But at the end of the day, I think he's confusing correlation with causation. You know, there is a lot of player engagement with those sports games that are live service, that do have tons of monetization, that do have multiplayer components. That's true. There's a lot of player engagement, players with tens of thousands of hours, I'm sure, in those franchises. But they are not that committed to those franchises because they're live service. They're committed because they like the sport in question, because they have a gambling addiction and they can't quit after pouring thousands of dollars into those games.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of reasons why they might be totally committed to that. Maybe it's even just a social thing where they're...
It could be just a social thing where their buddies are all playing. But I see the whole gambling thing because when I was playing Apex, like I spent a lot of money on the game. So I was committed to it because I liked the game. I thought it was fun, but I also did spend a lot of money into it. So I was like, I have all these cosmetics. I didn't want the game to die. So I was like, I got to play. You know what I'm saying? But like, that's not enough to keep people in. You know what I mean? It's like eventually you just say, fuck it.
buddies all play Madden together every Tuesday night, and that's why they stay connected, which would be an instance where you could point to the live service component bringing player engagement. But even then, you have to still be interested in the concept and the franchise and IP to begin with. Otherwise, you wouldn't even bother. None of those people would be interested in playing that game together unless they were initially interested in the game itself. But on the flip side, with Dragon Age the Veilguard, to look at player engagement primarily fundamentally misunderstands single-player games. Like, it just does. Players that are playing single-player games are not trying to get 1,000 hours out of their game.
No.
Most single-player gamers want a really good 30 hours, a really good 40 hours, 50 hours. In amazing games that are really, really good, like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, you know what? Give me 100 hours. Give me 200 hours. I'll take it. But it's got to be really, really good. But in the context of everything else EA does, 200 hours is a disappointing figure. They want to see you with 1,000 hours in Madden, with 1,000 hours in FC 25. They want those numbers to be crazy high, because the higher they are, the more you're playing, the more likely you are to sign up for their subscriptions, the more likely you are to engage with extra monetization, battle passes, whatever else in those live service games. So through Andrew Wilson's lens,
I think a good game length is 80 to 100 hours. And that's 80 to complete the story and an extra 20 hours to like completionist. You know what I'm saying? I think that's, or not 80. I'll say 60 to 100. 100 hours completionist, because some people, they want to be completionists and get everything. But yeah,
of everything that they specialize in, these sports games, I guess understand why he would think treating Veilguard like Madden would somehow magically lead to it becoming the Madden of fantasy games, which sounds horrible.
Yeah,
but
that sounds horrible.
You can sort of start to see how a deluded person could get there with some twisted logic.
He doesn't play video games, man. He does not play video games. He has not a clue on how the ecosystem works, or how gamers work, what the communities are like at all.
It's really shocking. I mean, it really is shocking, because again, I agree with Paul Tassi. I don't think you could find a single human being who plays video games that would come to that conclusion, that would say Veilguard would have been good if it were multiplayer, if it were live service, if it had some component that was living and breathing and constantly evolving. I don't think anybody on this planet would agree with that sentiment. But that's what the CEO is taking away, and it's amazing. Bet you're glad I asked you to put pillows on your hands now, because I'm sure you've just been face palming for the last 10 minutes. It's unbelievable. But I know what you might be thinking as we wrap up this video. Luke, how do you then square the firings and the restructurings at BioWare with this conclusion? If EA's CEO Andrew Wilson were actually following through on what he's saying, wouldn't he be making Mass Effect 5 a live service game? And I would say yes.
Yeah.
He would. And guess what we don't know much about?
Probably is going to.
Mass Effect 5. We just don't. So it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I can see Mass Effect being a live service game. Ouch. I can see that 100%. I don't see why they wouldn't. If that's what he wants to do. That's what
But I think more than anything, the executives at EA, and perhaps more importantly, the managers and executives over at BioWare, we're looking at all the feedback, looking at the poor sales numbers of Veilguard, and they said, listen, everybody agrees that room of people are responsible for the problems of the game. And if they had not done what they did, the game would have been better. And at some point, that's got to mean something. There have to be consequences. Like, if you are bad at your job, you do not get to keep your job. If you are Herman Holst and you lose $5 billion on terrible live service pursuits, and the 15th attempt at an adaptation of Horizon, at some point that should count for something, and you should get demoted or lose your job. You would think, right? It's just, for whatever reason, in the games industry over the last 10 years or so, there has been a consistent failing upwards where these studios...
Bro, Like for real. There's been across the board in the entire gaming industry. There's been a consistent failing upwards, and it's been fucking crazy. They're just hemorrhaging money into these studios that are giving them fucking flop after flop after flop, and they just keep spending more money thinking it's gonna work. It's actually
will
insane.
have people that are woefully underqualified
It
or just
literally fits the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. It's literally the definition of insanity.
just bad at what they do, but somehow they
mind.
end up in positions of leadership within these studios, and then they destroy an otherwise promising game. Whether you look at something like Dragon Age Veilguard, which had a lot of things going for it, technical polish, it was
It graphically looked great, you know?
really, really impressive.
Yeah.
It was an IP people knew and loved, had a ton of name recognition. People were rooting for this to be good. There were so many things.
I mean, I was hoping it was good when I first heard about it. For sure, 100%. The game's graphics look good. The gameplay looks pretty solid. But
Going for the game, and they still screwed it up. Or if
still
you look at
screwed it
something
up.
like Forspoken, there's all sorts of stories and reporting
Oh, God.
on how the writers behind the closed doors that were working on Forspoken
Forspoken.
were genuinely
I
shocked
would
that
never
people
play
were
that fucking
joking and
game.
memeing so hard on the game's dialogue. Before
Never.
it officially launched, people just simply shared
Like, why would I want to play as her? You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm not the target audience for
a
that game.
cutscene.
Did I just do that?
Well,
Oh, and
definitely
here's
with
that
my
dialogue that
assistance.
went
I did
viral.
not just do that.
We did.
Let's just sit back and enjoy
I
it.
just move shit with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
I just moved shit with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just move shit with my freaking mind! Yeah, okay, that is something I do now. I do magic, talk to sentient cuffs, kill jacked up beasts. You know what? I'll probably fly next.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
People just shared that clip.
That's horrible. That's dog shit garbage. That's
And it went viral because of how stupid it was and how much people
Yeah.
hated it and how cringe it was. And
It was cringe
reportedly,
as
the people
fuck.
that wrote it were genuinely shocked. People didn't think it was cool or hip or fly, hip to the jive, which shows you how horrifyingly out of touch they are. How did
Yeah.
they get that job if they thought that was cool? Similarly to Saints Row reboot, a franchise which also
Don't get me started on Saints Row reboot. This game is hot ass shit. It's hot shit, bro.
was much beloved.
It's straight fucking dumpster fire.
Had
man.
a storied history. People loved it for how irreverent it was.
They
And what we
fucked
end
up
up
that
getting is this
franchise.
awkwardly PC thing about eating the rich and paying off student loans. Just
Yeah.
the screenshots give me tingles at my spine, and not the good kind. It's
Yeah, like the premise is ripping off the rich and paying off student loans. You heard that right. Like, what happened to this
horrifying.
game?
But with all this said, time will tell whether
to that
there's
game?
anything that actually comes of it. Whether these layoffs actually result in anything, if studios actually learn what players want and what they, perhaps more importantly, what they don't want, what they find cringy and pandering and stupid, time will tell. But I can at least guarantee
They won't
you,
figure it out.
having spoken to some people at some
They're
pretty
not gonna figure out what a good game is until they fucking literally they have to shut down their studios. You know, they're not gonna figure it out. They have to shut down the studios, and then they'll figure it out. Oh, that's what the problem was.
big publishers, let's just say, everybody's aware.
If we look at a popular game developer, Nintendo, they never fail. All their games, there's no political shit in it whatsoever. It's a fucking game. Regardless of the graphical fidelity or what Nintendo does, their games are fucking just fun to play. That's all you have to do. You don't have to have the story and dialogue is there on some parts of it, but like, come on now. Like, you don't need to fucking spend hundreds of millions of dollars to sell fucking games, man. Just make the game fucking fun to play. And don't take the politics out of it. Nobody wants that shit.
Of why Dragon Age Veilguard actually failed. Everybody knows it, apparently, except for the EA CEO. And everybody's paying attention to it.
Yeah.
There is a lot of pressure within the writing rooms of all of these upcoming games over the next 2-3 years,
Yeah.
at least with the ones that can make changes. Everybody is hyper aware of this type of thing, of the tonal sensitivities that people have, of how people don't like feeling pandered to, people don't feel like being lectured to. People just want to play a good, compelling game that's fun
That's
and
it.
grounded in the world it's set in. And, you know, if Dragon Age the Veilguard had to flop catastrophically on the ocean surface after jumping off a cliff. So all these other games could do a beautiful swan dive.
Yeah.
Maybe the industry will be better for it, but time will.
It's how the cookie crumbles. You know what I'm saying? Somebody has to fail. Somebody must fucking fail so they can learn these lessons from somebody else, or else it will keep happening. And if it does keep happening, guess what? More people will fail. More studios will be shut down. I'm kind of actually not even upset about it. I'm happy that this has happened.